Okay, let me admit the public.
And if you could also, David, put up the agenda on the screen.
There you go. Did it work? Do you see it?
We got it. Thank you much. So
You're
we
welcome.
will, it is 7:03, so we'll call to order. Meg, if you would call the roll.
Mr. Collegian. I know I saw him.
I'm here.
Okay.
Thank
Mr. Sadi,
Present.
Mr. Zaharidis. You muted, Mark?
He's muted.
Okay. We saw you. Mr.
We
Macchio.
can almost hear you.
Weird.
Okay, we can hear you now, but it sounds like you're a little bit underwater.
Sorry.
Oh, but it's okay. We hear you.
Mr. Macchio has not been able to join us yet.
He has not appeared.
Okay. And for staff, we have Mr. Solkis, city planner, Mr. Harris, zoning enforcement officer, and myself, Meg Reed.
And
Chairman
Can I
Quish,
mute
Meg.
yourself?
Oh, and Chairman Quish.
Yes. So if it is, David, your call, whether you or Stephen presents us with 24-1.
I can do it. Unless Stephen, at all, you want to thumb wrestle?
No.
Okay, well, okay then. So let me just stop this for a second. I want to pull it up. I should have had it lined up. Let me, that is group homes and okay, and I will now. Okay. Did my share button go? Oh, this is not good. There we go. Let's share that. Oops. Let me find it. You know, the two screens usually work out really well and I can be organized. For some reason tonight. But oh, look, here comes Mark. While I look for the document, which we just here and just got reduced, let's see. There we go. I'll put it over here. Share screen. Share screen.
Well, David's doing that. Welcome, Mark. David is just about to share the screen with the first item on our agenda.
Yeah.
And if Meg, you could show Mark being present.
I will
We
change that.
24-1 proposed changes to bring Article 3, Section 311 permitted uses and 312 special uses into compliance with Public Act 23-142. And sort of to bring you up to speed too is that some of what we do is like housekeeping, getting our regs to sync with state regs. Some of it is, stuff that you think, I think, any one of us thinks is important to work on. One thing outside of the housekeeping that we're going to talk about tonight is affordable housing. But first, we have a couple of the sort of, I don't know, mundane things that we are tasked with doing is making sure that our regs are consistent with state regs. So, David, take it from there.
Yeah. So in this case, our regs have to be consistent with the change that was enacted by the legislature during the legislative 2021 session. And often the legislature, they will make changes to regulations and things that they want from us. But there's really no penalty not to change other than you have to know that the change is there and that we should have it in the regulations. In this particular case, the legislature was very keen on making sure that every municipality complied with this. And as part of the regulation or part of the statute, they wanted the mayor or the chief administrative officer of every city and town to report um, by this month, by January, whether or not you were in compliance. So this sort of slipped through the cracks because we've made a lot of changes to our regs, and so we did have to report that we did not make the change. At least our regulations have the uses in there. There are places that don't even have a regulation in place to change, where they have to put in all new regulations. So in our case, we have them. We just have to tweak them just so they're compliant. And we have told the state that we would expect our board to approve the change by the end of March. So
Okay, so more than just the nuts and bolts, how about a little bit of a higher level look of what the change is that we're sort of out of compliance with, to sort of give us, you know, the context, and then if there's any further you know, nuts and bolts stuff, we can do that too. But let's, so that we all understand the higher level what we are, rather than having to read it, just sort of give us the rundown, if you would, please, David.
Sure. Basically, currently, we require under our regulations that group daycare homes and adult daycare homes, as defined, need a special permit. They're in our regulations that they need a special permit. The legislature has said, no, you can't do that anymore. You can have a family daycare home or a group daycare home as of right. And it's to be treated the same as a single family home in your regulations. So because we had that listed as a special use, we're now fixing that and making it just a regular use, which you would see here under number 1 of the proposed text. We've added the group daycare home in there, removing it from 3.12.2. So it's gone from that, and there it's removed, and so now it will be compliant with the state regs.
Now, do we have to do this with every single residential district?
Yes, it doesn't matter even the type of district we have, it's the use. So if someone has wants to have a family daycare home or group daycare home, they're entitled to do it. I suppose you could stretch that out to be any zone that allows a residential use. So it would be all the R zones. It would probably apply to other zones that we have that allow residential as well.
Right. So do we have to actually, can we change it once and just have an overriding statement, or do we have to go to each? Do we have to go to each actual section and include language in each actual section? Whether it's, yeah. How deep is the dive that we have to change the language just once, or do we have to do it in multiple places?
That's a good question, because now that you raise that point, I know definitely it's in the R zones, but Stephen, do we have these uses actually listed in some of the other zones? We might.
In them listed in any other zone other than 3.1.
Okay, well, there you go. Then it would be just
The difference between the two is family care is up to 6 kids and group is up to 12 kids. That's the only difference between the two.
I'm sorry, Stephen, I didn't.
If you go over 12 kids, then you're in daycare.
Okay, I somehow I got to get my volume up. I didn't hear that. But so we have just this one. We have more than one spot to change language. Is that what you're telling me, Stephen?
No.
Okay. You're saying once we do it here, it will communicate with any potential residential mixed use.
I've never seen family care or group daycare in any other zone except for 3.1, but I'll double check tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, I just know that there's like, there's a daycare and a commercial space up on the post road next to a bar. I don't know.
Those are, I believe, different. They don't fall under our definitions here. Because they're bigger.
Okay, so childcare is.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, yeah, again, that's what my only question is if we're doing this to conform, I don't want to come back 3 or 4 times to get different, if it's 4.1, I don't want to do it each time. If we want to do it once, we want to just get it all done, make sure it's right.
Yeah, and I'll double check the wording on the statute. I think it said any zone that allows a single family home. So, I mean, in that case, it would be our R zones.
Okay. Okay, so, then one thing for the, old members and new members, just, there is no raise your hand or whatever. Anybody has a question or wants to talk or say anything, it's just informal. Just bark out, ask a question or contribute any way you want, so. Not,
Thanks, Mr. Quich. I was waiting to raise my hand, but I don't have to. The accuracy of what David was explaining to us is in the first language. It has to be a one-family detached dwelling. So I think they're listening to David and Steve, and then that's our residential zones. And secondly, just a matter of correction through you to David, I think it was based on a 2023 statute that's based on the mayor's letter to the undersecretary. But
yes, you're correct. I'm sorry.
You don't have to apologize. I just happen to have it right in front of me, looking at it, and when I went through it. But I think that as the chair has pointed out in initial argument, comments, this is a tweaking based on a general statute that went into effect October 1st of last year, and we're just tweaking it. So I would support the activity.
But it's also in a manner different from any single or multifamily dwellings. So that would be multifamily and mixed use as well. Any multifamily dwelling.
Yeah, that's what the statute says.
So again, the solution that we're proposing, the new language, I'm not pretending to know the best way to do it, but just make sure that we don't do it in R2 or R1 and not everywhere else. I mean, make sure that if we can do it with one global statement against all single or multifamily dwellings, fine. If we have to do it in every single instance of single and multifamily dwellings in our regs, make sure we just do it once. That's the only thing I would ask.
So we'll take assuming that the subcommittee is agreeable to making this change. What we'll do between now and when we send it to the board for their approval at the next meeting to circulate to the state and the council, the regional planning commissions, we'll make sure that whatever we need in there to cover, the single family and multifamily is in our regulations. We'll figure out what we have to do. So we do this once.
Okay, good, excellent. Anybody have any additions or comments they are interested in sharing with this? If not, I guess let's codify this by a vote. Can we just do it by affirmation, David? Just all those in favor, aye? Sure. Or do we need a roll call?
This is a subcommittee. You could do it any way you want.
Okay, let's everybody in favor of moving this forward to the full board, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Therefore, it moves forward. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you.
Second one is 2315. Proposed changes to Article 5, Section 514, Figure 4, off-street parking for multi-family developments. It's I can't see the whole thing, but to comply with Public Act 2129. So the photos of people on the meeting are blocking some of my thing. But anyway, 23-15.
Okay. So
get David or Stephen, if you want to tell us what we're talking about here.
So I'm going to redeem myself and say this regulation was a requirement that came up during the 2021 legislative session. So we're just getting around to fixing it. Let me pull it up here. Open it. Okay. Can you see it? Did it just pop up, I'm hoping?
Did-
Yep.
Okay. We'll go to the table. So, a table's worth 1,000 words. Currently, under our regulations, if you are a multi-family dwelling, and you have an efficiency apartment, a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, over here, these are the requirements for parking. It varies between the MCDD, CD1, CD2, but basically we require under our regulations 2 spaces for an efficiency, 2 spaces for a 1-bedroom, 3 spaces for a 2-bedroom, and 3 spaces for a 3-bedroom. The legislature has said, nope, you can only have you cannot require more than the following, which is 1 space for an efficiency, 1 space for a 1-bedroom, 2 spaces for a 2-bedroom, and 2 spaces for a 3-bedroom. So we're just bringing our regulations into compliance with the state. And if you, I talk to developers, because they come to the office all the time, and we see, plans that this board has reviewed that is built to our current standards. And if you go to really any of those developments, you'll find often there's lots of extra parking, because it's just the nature of housing today. People, especially young people, don't necessarily even have a car. They look to Uber to move them around. And if they're in Milford and they're downtown, they're hopping on a train, they're working from home, they're living downtown, and they might not even, people might not even have a car. So again, this is just to catch up to the requirements of the state.
When you make suggest these changes, do we have to
Yes, we have to.
come in? Do we have to come in compliance with the state, or can we do our own if we wanted to?
We have no choice. It's the law. We have to comply.
Gotcha.
You
Okay.
have to-
Well, one thing, Mark, we could do, this is the minimum, right? So we could say, if we wanted to, in CDD or Milford Center Design District, we could say, if you have an efficiency, you don't even need one. This is just, we can't ask an efficiency for more than 1 space,
Right.
or a 1-bedroom for more. We could do less.
Well,
The state is just giving us a top of the barrel.
yeah, there's nothing to keep, say a developer is building a complex of all 1-bedrooms, and the regulation now is, we can't require them to have more than 1 space per unit. There's nothing to keep them from asking the board, hey, we would like to provide two spaces per unit. And if the board would like to entertain that, you could, or you don't have to, because there's several schools of thought. A lot of municipalities around the country now are not looking at parking minimums; they're looking at parking maximums, because it's felt that we don't want to use valuable land for parking cars anymore, and people's habits have changed. So a lot of development doesn't really require as much parking as it used to. So we're just, again, bringing in on our table here, we're just making it in line with what the statutes say we have to do. If at some point someone wants more, it'll be up to you to decide. A classic example of a developer who likes more parking than whatever anyone's regulations say is Walmart. They're famous for that. Anywhere they go, they want an amount of parking that usually exceeds whatever the local requirements are. And you go there now, and I think you'll find that majority of their lot is empty. But that was a requirement back when they came to our town, and a request when they came to our town, and they have done that around the country. So
Question: We have to come into compliance with the state.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And keep in mind, Mark, just a fundamental thing with our zoning regulations, we only are allowed to have our zoning regulations because of the state. The state enables us to have the regulations. And our regulations have to comply with what the statutes say and whatever the legislature ends up doing. So you have 169 municipalities, and I think all 169 now have zoning. But everyone does it just a little bit different. But as long as it complies with statute, it complies. So our residential zones are called what we call them. West Haven, New Haven, Westport. We'll all call those zones something different. But in the end, it's a single family zone, it's a commercial zone, et cetera. So,
Okay. So I think this is fairly cut and dry. Does anybody have any thoughts that, I think that we're just getting in line with what the state says, and, I'm not sure that in the long run, it's going to be a harm to the city. So, I mean, I think that if we don't do it and someone comes in and we deny them because they don't have the same parking, they'll just go and say, well, you have to say yes because the state says these
Right.
are the minimums.
Yeah,
it's not a maximum, it's a minimum. They can come back with more, but there's
yeah,
the minimum.
we've already had some attorneys inquire, with projects that are coming in. So
They're waiting for the change, yeah.
well, they're going to submit what they're going to submit, and they know what the statute says, and they know what our thing says. So we'll just make sure that everyone's on the same page.
Okay, so is there we'll say just put it to a vote. Are we okay with pushing this on to the full board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Seeing none, it moves forward.
That's
And then, so next, David, I don't know if you have it, if you've seen it yet, but I did send a spreadsheet that if you could share with the screen. I sent it to everybody, but so they could play with it on their own. It's not really necessarily a suggestion, but it's just a tool that, you can enable editing and everyone can mess with it on their own. But so again, just to reiterate, we have a situation where we all know this. I'm just going to, whatever, go over it again. Like we have 830-G, which says that if your municipality does not have 10% bona fide, deed restricted, affordable housing, which, is whatever complicated formula it is, then a developer can come in, propose a development that complies with the 8-30G, and they can skirt all the zoning regulations and are only kind of bound by the fire guys, the police, the health department. We've denied things in the past and we've gone to court and we've lost. And so the question now becomes, how do we get to 10%? We have probably 600,000 or 700,000 units to be developed under 830G, with 30% designated as affordable, but they haven't been built yet. So we've approved stuff that gets us closer to the end of the road, but they haven't been built. So it has to be built, commissioned, people living there for it to count. Outside of new state regulations that will count federal housing and other stuff, we're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah,
So an idea that other cities and towns are doing is they are requiring all multifamily developments to include a portion of that development as affordable, and affordable in terms of deed restrictions, so that it counts when it goes up to, to our count. Are we at 10% affordable? So one of the things that other municipalities have done is they've created a sliding scale. And so this is one that I'm just putting out here for conversation. You all have it and you can play with the numbers on your own. But what I presented here was that under 5 units, there's no restriction. between 5 and 9, you have to have 10% plus 1 unit. So that's at that number of units in the development, you have 2 affordable. So that we got to, we have to be more, at 10%, we're just breaking even. If we have 100 units built at market rate, we're getting further behind the 8 ball. So this kind of thought process is, how do we get ahead of the curve? Between 10 and 20, it's 15% plus 1. You can look at it yourself and see what this means. But I think that I would really like to open up the discussion to have whatever you folks think. Totally welcome to hear if we shouldn't do anything or we should do more, or I think the longer term vision is that this is not today's decision. It's just the start of a conversation. We do have a housing expert that David can talk about in a minute, coming to the next meeting to talk about, not just because I say other cities and towns are doing stuff, that, somebody who's a real deal, legitimate expert on it can weigh in on, what people are trying to find a solution. Again, I'll just open it up to just bark out whatever you want. If you have a just
Jimmy, I have a question. Do
Yep.
we have legal authority to compel affordable housing in our applications? What would be what's the legal justification?
We, our we can specify in our regulations for a particular type of use conditions. We do that now for different things. For I'm not going to say parking because we just beat that to a dead horse, but we have setbacks, we have height, we allow uses here.
But this would be a new. I'm sorry to interrupt you, David.
That's okay.
It would be a new regulation. So there's nothing in our regulations right this minute.
Right.
Okay, so this would be all right. That's all. I don't disagree with those. I just wanted to clarify that. All right.
Yeah, it's new. And we're going to have a bigger challenge in that a lot of cities that do this, they have a tiered system like this because they already have their 10%, but they realize they still want more housing that's affordable. So, you want to, in New Haven, develop something over a certain size, you're going to be providing some affordable, whether you like it or not. In New Haven, probably 40% of the housing in New Haven would probably qualify as affordable.
Like deed restricted affordable, or just affordable by accident?
I don't know what the mechanism they use, but I mean I think they use the same indexes that A30G uses, except that they go for their developments. We look at 60% and 80% of the average area income, depending on the project in New Haven. They go down to 40% or even lower, depending on the size of the project. So more people can apply, to live there. So what we have to think about is, we can have this a tiered unit, which I think is a really great thing to think about and start to discuss. And when David Fink, who's the housing expert who is under contract with the Regional Council of Governments and the Regional Planning Agency, he can, I think, give us some ideas for how we can get more. My concern is that we can come up with this tiered system, but because it's in the zoning regulations, when all is said and done, a developer can bypass our regulations with A30G and build what they want. So,
Well, true. I mean, they can do that. They can definitely do that in any case. And what we have here in Milford is,
right.
We have what I've just been reading about, NOAH, naturally occurring affordable housing. I mean, we have federal housing. We have a huge stock of just apartments, whether they're in single families or small apartment buildings or 2 or 3 or 4 families that would really legitimately be affordable.
Yep.
But they don't count.
Yep,
towards
I
our
know.
10%.
I
So,
know.
so again, I'm not in bed with this at all. I just think we need to start the conversation. And again,
Absolutely.
how can we
Exactly.
get to a place besides, if the only avenue to get to 10% is developers picking apart neighborhoods, then I don't think we're doing our job. I
Right.
mean, we're also zoning, but we're planning too, and planning and
Right.
zoning. So this is the cool part of the whole thing.
Right.
I'm not saying I know the answer, because I'm pretty darn sure I don't know the answer. I'd like to have everybody's input and the experts, but one of the great things would be if the state would count. We've done scattered site, we've got federal housing all over the place that doesn't even count towards a 20%. And I'm still all for affordable housing. So some kind of, and again, like you said, David, even if we were at 10%,
Right.
have a tiered system
Right.
does help
Create affordability.
somebody.
Yeah.
A kid graduates college, wants to live in the same town as his parents, doesn't want to live at home, but can't afford it.
Yeah.
You could say, well, move somewhere else, but they want to be here. You lived here for 50 years and now you're older and you're retired and you'd like to stay around, but you can't afford it. So the community effort it's a valuable, I think it's
Absolutely.
a good goal anyway.
I agree. I totally agree with you.
I just don't know how to do it.
Yeah, and we may have to look at, and again, this is where Dave will be helpful. We may need to come up with some sort of an incentivization, to make it attractive for developers to give us more of this, without going the full 830G route. So yeah, and then we're always fighting, whether we know it or not, the basically all the other housing units that are being built, so every new single family house that goes up, every apartment that goes in that is not affordable, every one of those puts us farther and farther behind the 8 ball. When I first started, we were at 7%. We were at 7%, closing in on the 10, and because development has been what it's been, over the last 20 years,
Where are we now?
I think we're the high fives. It's dropped.
Yeah. So one thing, like I remember one time where there was a zone that only permitted multifamily if it was 830G, and then somehow the political universe changed. Had a zone change for that, 200 or 300 units, and that put us way behind the 8 ball. So my thinking about making every single development be required to have some, whether so you can't go and you can't change a zone on a particular site to allow it. This is just everywhere. I mean, you could obviously, if there was political will if we had enacted something similar to this, and then down the road another board decided to get rid of it, that's fine. But this is kind of, I think, at least a roadblock between truncating our ability to create a space where affordable housing is dispersed throughout the community, and it is also fair to the developers. I understand it's got a pencil. So at one point, I think we should have some of the, not necessarily Bob Smith, but we'd enjoy his, input, but, smaller people, maybe Buddy Field or other guys that are building smaller stuff to say, you know what, for 10 units, I can't give you 3. It just won't pencil out. And so, now they may push the envelope a little, but, I mean, it may be valuable. I think it's a longer term thing than just today, but I think it might be valuable to have some experts and some local developers to
totally.
weigh in.
I mean,
Well,
affordable
the goal of
use.
830G is to affordable housing. Isn't this what you're laying out here, helping to get to that goal, Jim?
Yeah, it is. It's sort of trying to get to the goal without
That's what I'm saying.
letting the developers skirt all the other zoning regulations. So you can't go to an acre zoning and put instead of one house, put in 12 apartments. We're just saying if you have a legitimate site that has 12 apartments, that's fine, but you have to help us get to the goal to prevent neighborhood deterioration in terms of cultural deterioration, whatever term somebody could come up with.
I agree. I agree with this. This is what I voted against recently, a new community, because I felt like, why are we allowing them to come in here without, it did exactly what David did. It lowered our percentage of affordable housing, and it's encouraging more 830G. So we'd be doing a disservice to the community of Milford if we didn't do something like this to help get to that number, so they don't end up popping these things in every neighborhood, which people complain about. Every single person I know says to me, or they hear that I'm on the planning and zoning, why did they put up this thing in this neighborhood? They don't understand it. So this would help us as a community get closer to that percentage. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Developers.
I think David's point is a good one too, is that, it's a carrot and a stick. I mean, maybe part of what we end up with is some kind of a carrot, that when you comply with this, we can maybe, if you go beyond this, say we set a minimum, a minimum. This is just an example. Let's just call this the minimum. If you go over the minimum and give us more than 10% plus one, or more than 22% over 80 units, then we'll let you go up another 20 feet, because that becomes, now you can monetize that 5 acres better because we gave you some leeway. If you give us quid pro quo, we'll relax some of the something, whatever it is. I don't even know. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to do it, but I think David's instinct is right. There's we set a minimum, and then you go beyond the minimum, there's a carrot at the end of the road. I don't know what that is. And maybe between the developers and the experts and just, our members that just sort of think about it, or, read about it or whatever, and staff comes up with stuff they know about other, communities and what best practices in other places, and we learn.
Jim, can I clarify something?
Please do, yeah.
Yeah, this is Joe speaking. I think Brian raised the question about, to clarify, our regulations right now do have provisions requiring affordable housing in specific zones when you're doing a multifamily. And I know, as you know, we got rid of the one in the CDD1 zone, but I think we still have provisions in there in the CDD zones that talk about, if you're going to do multifamily, a percentage of it has to be affordable. So it's already in there. It's just, I think what you're talking about is doing it on a citywide basis for housing in general, right?
Yeah, irrespective of zone. Exactly. I think that we ran into that where I had a misunderstanding and was corrected about something that was on the corner of Buckingham and New Haven Ave. I thought the provision required affordable. And it seemed like there was, I'm not quite sure. I think at one point I understood that my understanding was not correct, but I don't remember the language that was in there and why it didn't apply. But I think that, yes, I think you're right, Joe, is that that we want to have something that is citywide,
yeah,
and that always, no matter what you do, if you're building more than 4 units, you have to do it, whether it's in a mixed use, whether it's whatever, doesn't matter. You can't let us go backwards. This is all and I'm not sure this is the best way to do it, but just like Mark says, we just can't go backwards. We can't just allow something and go backwards, because every time we go forward, it's like tooth and nails. And now all of a sudden we're trying to be proactive. I mean, I'm not sure this is the best way. If somebody comes up with a better idea, and I'm all for it. If it gets us down the road to
you have to build at scale. That's the underlying problem. And I don't think we can rely on developers to do this on their own because their job is to make money for their company. So they're not going to do affordable units or an affordable development if they can't make a profit. So they have to build at scale so they can make a profit. So if they build 20 units and 6 of them are affordable, 14 of them are market rate, and we continually fall farther and farther behind.
So then there's got to be a carrot,
The
like
problem- I
David
don't
said.
think any single town can solve this problem on their own. It's going to take the state and the federal government to chip in. That's my opinion.
Well, I think it's got to be both. I think it's got to be a carrot and a stick, right? There's the bottom line level, and you want to go to develop somewhere else, do it. But Milford is a pretty desirable place. I don't think, no matter what, I don't think we don't have that much land. We don't have that much land empty, and we don't have that much redevelopable land unless we start thinking about stuff that I know you've spoken about, Stephen, in the past, is we take these CDD zones and encourage, mixed use with residential. It's placemaking. It reinvigorates, areas, and if we incentivize residential mixed use in these areas, it may be, maybe a triple win. We take underdeveloped spaces. We have under access to affordable housing, and then you create kind of, an urban lift in certain areas, whether it's New Haven Ave or Bridgeport Ave or whatever. I mean, there's, and I don't know, just by, there's not a broad brush that solves everything.
We certainly have areas where we can plan for long-term density and mixed use. I don't think there's not a quick fix for the housing issue. We just have to plan for the long haul.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's not a magic wand that's going to change it overnight, but
I think we're short something like 120,000 houses or dwelling units around the state. That's what I thought I heard today at the seminar I went to. It was kind of eye-opening. That's why rents are so high.
So Mr. Quish, if I might be heard for a few minutes.
Please do.
Thank you. I'm the liaison for this board to the regional council governments. And David talked about an expert who I suggest we should hear. I was part of a group that did a bus tour to Wallingford, and we saw 2 developments, and this back into the city of Milford, we saw 2 developments. And again, the stark contrast, which has been mentioned, is the available land to develop in, say, Wallingford is substantially different than Milford. But the point that struck me was that in Wallingford, and it's probably because they have more land, the developers worked hand in hand with the municipal officials. Whereas the city of Milford has traditionally been opposed to granting these 830Gs. And more recently we have, obviously, because every time we deny it, it goes up to a court and we lose. The point that I'm trying to make is that there should be some flexibility. I suggest we listen to this expert because they've been around it a lot longer. And I think that we also have to be mindful of, at least through our state representative, it was represented that there was some changes to affordable housing that didn't get passed, that sometimes seem to be a little bit more restrictive was going on. I don't remember a lot of it because it didn't get passed. But again, the state legislature is very aware of the issue. They're the ones that enacted 830G and may well not have understood the full impact, or maybe they fully did. But I suggest we listen to the expert. And I think that, as the chair suggested, possibly either at that particular meeting or maybe some subsequent meeting, we get some of the local developers to get their opinions, because they're all going to be part of what we do to solve this particular problem. And if we try to work as a community with everybody that has some part of the game to play, we should do so. Thank you for listening to me.
Good. Yeah, I think you're echoing our kind of instinct on the thing. And what's your instinct, David? Do we have our next meeting? We'll have some housekeeping, and then we will have we'll continue this portion of regulations subcommittee going until we have something to present to the full board. But do we have an expert and a developer next meeting, or do we just do one?
Um, that's a good question. Let me talk to him and see what he thinks. Because he may have an awful lot of things that he would like to discuss, you know.
Yeah, I mean, just get a time frame. If he thinks he needs a half hour,
Yeah.
or if he needs 10 minutes, or if he needs 45 minutes, if he needs a half hour or less, maybe we invite someone else.
Right.
And if he wants 45 minutes, then we don't invite somebody else.
Right. You know, working with him, you know, through the years on various things, he's one of these people who will talk as much or as little as you would like. So, because he's also very patient. So, you know, maybe it makes sense to get some ideas from him, and then at a meeting after that, have some developers here. And maybe he could even attend that meeting and just, you know, facilitate more of a discussion then.
And also, you know, one thing I would ask is, Stephen, you know, you are, you know, an expert in the field and have, you know, a passion for Milford's past, present, and future. If you, you know, want to mull over where we've been, where we are, and where we should be, I would love to hear from you the next meeting, just sort of your instincts and, you know, what you feel will help us get to where I think we all collectively want to be. So I would appreciate if you could, you know, percolate some of your own thoughts or get them all together and have something to say at the next meeting as well.
Okay, sure.
So next order of business would be,
Oh.
if you want to just go over, David, the what you put on, just so that we have kind of things coming up. There's some interesting things for us to be considering.
Yeah.
Um,
I want to get rid of that. Okay, give me 2 seconds. I'm missing my. Oh, there we go. There's the X to get rid of that. That. Let's pull it up. Let me get the. You know, usually having the multiple screens has been. I could
well,
jump.
David's doing that. Well,
Yeah.
David's doing that. I just want to say one thing to each of the members here. If you have an instinct or a passion about a given thing, this is the forum. This is forum. If you have constituents that think we should have a zone change on XYZ street or area, you know, consider it, bring it up at in this forum. You know, just this is where we can add some, you know, we have the POCD we worked on for a few years, but this is where the rubber meets the road. So we will have, over the next year, we will have developers and outside people proposing zone changes and language changes to fit their needs. But if any individual here feels that they believe our regulations can be improved by a change, by all means, it's welcomed and encouraged to bring it to this subcommittee, and we will talk about it, vet it, get experts, and move forward with that which we collectively feel is worthy of moving forward, and then the whole board sees it. So this is kind of the fun part of planning and zoning. Let's collectively make a difference. Let's improve the city, just little one click at a time. But every one of your thoughts and inputs are both welcomed and encouraged. So we have minimum dwelling unit size.
Yep.
Again, this is a compliance issue. Could you give me a quick overview of that, please, David?
Sure. The next four items are all compliance issues. We have in our regulations, minimum sizes for different types of multifamily dwellings and single-family homes. And they vary depending on the zone that we're in. The state has said, no, you can't do that. You can't have a minimum size. So, we have to remove the minimum size. They do tie it to the building code, the minimum in the building code. And
Building code, housing code, or other appropriate code.
codes, right? So,
That's the language they used.
yep. So I've
So
had
is YouTube an appropriate,
yeah.
Who writes
So-
this?
So the question, yeah. So we'll end up. It probably makes sense when we change the language to just defer to those. That language from the state, because
Yeah.
who can predict what the building code is going to say next year, or the housing code or the fire code.
and again, David, I think one of our issues it will be that we have, if we have 11 different zones, and we have 11 different minimum sizes, and they're different. So we're going to have to, that may be complicated to just have one wide brush that changes everything in one bit of language.
Yeah,
Now, the
Stephen.
character language refinement
Yeah,
of existing language, that's totally foreign to me. Could you help us?
yeah. We have in our zoning language that talks about character, and it's in a couple of spots.
Okay.
And the legislature has said you can't do that with zoning anymore. You have to tie whatever it is that you're discussing and your feelings about something to a standard, and whatever that standard is. So we can't have language like, character language. Well, this development is going to ruin the character of the neighborhood. And one of the reasons the legislature did that is also court cases where boards have turned things down and used the words like, well, this ruins the character of the neighborhood. And the court said, yeah, no. So
But we
what's
do, but there is, I believe there is some language that gives us leeway to have, whether it's architectural review in different areas. So if you would, before our next meeting, if you could give us some background on all the implications of this,
yeah,
that there is, possibly in a certain zone, you have to, meet certain restrictions. I understand character is so loose
and
that it becomes something that's indefensible. But if you could educate us before the next meeting with
Sure.
some data, I'd
Sure.
appreciate that.
yeah,
And then the outdoor dining, what is that refinement?
Okay, so those of you who may not have been on the board, during COVID, there were executive orders that allowed outdoor dining as of right for restaurants, where before that, in our regulations, if you had outdoor dining, you needed a special permit. The state said during COVID, no, as of right, any restaurant could do it. And as time went on, they have refined their language, and we changed our regulations to accommodate outdoor dining, but they have since refined it again since we have changed our language. And it talks about the ability for restaurants to, as of right, have outdoor dining, and as of right, they can use parking spaces, but they don't have the right to use other areas that aren't parking or walkways, in a safe manner. So we just want to clarify our language.
So again, this is compliance with state public
Right.
PA 2129 and the cottage industry. I tried to look up PA 2129, and it was 25 pages, and I don't think I found cottage industry, but then it referenced something else, and it was not a searchable PDF, so I couldn't just bang, 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 go from here to there. So if you could somehow give us the relevant links so that we understand it before the meeting, and I think we can put all these things on the meeting for next month, as well as keeping keeping the affordable stuff on.
Yeah,
just
because this is quick stuff. So, and quickly, what cottage industry is, this people, they make things in their kitchen to sell, at the church fair or at the, the Sunday greengrocer in the park, those sorts of things. And it turns out you need a state license to do it. So what the legislature did was make it easier for people who are, selling pies at the county fair, or to be able to use their house, use their kitchen to do it. And we have to allow them to do it. We can't say, oh, it's a home business, you have got to go to the planning and zoning board. No, it's a matter of right. And we have nothing in our regulations about it. We've had inquiries by people, and we have given zoning permission to anyone who asks, because we know it's not in our regulations, but it's by statute. So it'd be just nice to actually have it recognized in our regulations as being there, and and just as of right use.
excellent. Yeah, like you're making neckties in your house. It's okay.
Yeah.
Not that very many people, except Mark, wearing a necktie. I don't know. Something about that. He's making a statement there.
Yeah,
Well,
So
we're-
again,
that's why I'm bored
meeting-
today.
every meeting will come to this, member suggestions. And I know it's a new meeting, a new board setting. And if there is a member suggestion tonight, I would love to hear it. And I would also say, whether there is or not, that next meeting, in the next month, give it some thought. What do you or your constituents feel is something that is a harm to some people that we could fix, or something that you see could be an enhancement? And, it's not just a snap of a finger. We talk about it, we vet it, we bring it to the entire board, we circulate it to the stakeholders like the Regional Council of Governments, and then it comes back for public hearing. And so everything is vetted, but there's no better place to start than right here. And I think this is, again, I'll probably say it every single meeting. This is actually the fun part of the whole exercise of being on the board, is that we have an opportunity to daydream stuff up, and they could be good ideas and they could not. So we vet them together. And if we can make it enhance the lifestyle of the citizens of Milford and stakeholders, then it's a good thing. Approval of minutes, 11/2/23, a couple of months ago. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Quish, before we get there, could we just have a couple of minutes, because
Oh,
We've
yeah,
been
yeah,
long.
do whatever you want.
it's been long today. Public Act 2129, I found it on the internet. I'm gonna send to Mr. Sulkus for distribution to the board. On page 2, they talk about cottage clusters and cottage industry. So I'm just letting you know, I'm helping out. I'll send it over to David, and he can send it out to the members of the board. And I
Awesome.
make a motion to approve the minutes of the 11/2/23. I was present.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, then, without objection, minutes are approved. And just want to thank
Hey, Jim.
everybody for being here and being part of this.
Jim,
If
can I
anybody
make a
else
comment,
wants a
please?
Closing statement? Yep.
Jim?
Sure.
Yeah, because you gave our office a lot of work, a lot of assignments here. Can we set a date for the next meeting, please?
Yes.
It's already set.
We do have a schedule that if David, you would share that with Joe.
Yep.
We did a year. We were gonna have it on Valentine's Day next month, but David said no. He was gonna get yelled at from his bride, so we changed it. But it's pretty much between the Wednesday between our 2 Tuesday meetings. There's a couple of alterations, but it's primarily once a month, and primarily on a Wednesday at 7, on the Wednesday between the two
Meetings, the first and
two
first and
standard
third
meetings,
Tuesdays,
so
right.
that we don't have 2 meetings in the same week.
So next month in February, it will be on,
I believe I think it's the end of the month.
28th.
Yeah, the 28th.
On the 28th, Wednesday, the 28th. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
We skipped the week for the Valentine's Day, and then the next week was the regular meeting, so then we went to the following week. And we still had a week between the first meeting in March, so kind of made sense. And if anybody has any conflicts with that date, just please let David know. And, I think that because it's remote, what the heck? I mean, if everybody's okay to move a remote meeting because one individual has a conflict or something, it's fine, as long as everybody's okay with it. I mean, it's just kind of nice to have a longer term schedule.
I sent that stuff to David just now, Mr. Quish.
All right, thank you. And I really want to just thank you very much for your time and attention to this. I think it is, potentially something that's, we can make a difference here. But I'll say, I will probably say that every week or every month. But anyway, thanks so much. And for me, good night.
Good night,
Good night,
everyone.
all.
Everybody.
Have a good night.